there are other opponents besides Florida, Georgia, and Alabama on Tennessee's schedule, and Tennessee will face some pretty talented players. I don't know how much longer that's going to happen because I think players transfer from schools like we're going to mention to bigger schools. But a column on offthehooksports.com that you can check out by Caleb Calhoun is the top 5 opponents that Tennessee will face non-conference. And start with Mike. What's the dealio? Quarterback at Austin Peay, where I love the fact that they say go Peay all the time. And it's brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Tell me about Mike Dealio before I tell you more about Andy Mason and other non-conference opponents that the Vols should be worried about.
It's actually Mike Dealio, funny enough.
I know, but it sounded better with Dealio.
Mike Dealio is, and actually Austin Peay has about 4 guys that are being looked at as NFL draft prospects for next year. They went 7-4. They've got a tight end in Jordan Goko and a couple of transfers. Michael Rutland Jr. is a defensive back transfer from Princeton, and Tyler Long is another transfer. But Mike Dealio transferred from MTSU. Dual threat, threw for over 2,400 yards last year, rushed for another 680, had 29 total.
This sounds so catty and mean, but you're talking about transfer. So I think about people transferring up. And I'm wondering, did they just transfer because it was closer to home, or did they transfer from Powell Middle School?
Well, they clearly didn't transfer because it was closer to home. Went from MTSU to Austin Peay. There's not much of a difference in.
Yeah, I'm just wondering in general. I don't know how the transfer portal works on that level.
But I get.
I know if you're at UAB and you're really good and you want to play for a championship, you go to a bigger school. I get that. I don't know how it works at that level.
Sometimes transfers are just about fit, though, when you transfer down. I mean, look, Joe Flacco couldn't start at Pitt. He transferred to Delaware, and he became a Super Bowl winning quarterback. It's funny to say, but
it is funny to say. Well, I get transferring down, but you're talking about going from MTSU to Austin Peay. Anyway, so tell me about Dealio.
Yeah, so he was a dual threat, and he led Austin Peay to a 7-4 record last year. And look, dual threat quarterbacks can give Tennessee trouble when their defense is a question. Do I think Tennessee is going to lose to Austin Peay? No. Okay, I don't like that's a circled win. I'm not out here saying, oh, watch out for Austin Peay, guys. But I'm just saying he is a very, very, very good quarterback for his level.
Okay, what's the dealio with Trey Moore, who you've got number 4 on Tennessee's most fretted about non-conference opponents? He's an edge rusher out of UTSA, the University of Texas, San Antonio, which people don't like when you say that out. They're the only school I've ever been around, I guess LSU, that prefers the acronym over the actual name. We've gotten complaints on that on our YouTube channel. Trey Moore, edge rusher for the Roadrunners.
So just a heads up, guys, UTSA is far and away the best team out of conference Tennessee's playing this year. Way better than Virginia.
Totally agree.
And they are an offensive-oriented team, but Trey Moore is their one threat on defense, and this dude is a threat. 18 tackles for a loss last year, 8 sacks, and 6 pass deflections at the same time, 2 forced fumbles, 59 tackles, 39 of which were solo. He could give Joe Milton a lot of problems. And one thing we don't know about Joe Milton yet, we've only seen him play in a few games. We don't know about his pocket presence yet that well. I think it's better than where Hendon Hooker was in 2021, but I don't think it's where Hendon Hooker was in 2022. And so Milton's pocket presence is a gigantic question mark heading into the year. And Dave, you know this. If you don't have pocket awareness, that's probably the number one thing you can't track in stats, because everybody talks about the offensive line when a quarterback has a lot of sacks. I've watched enough football. I blame the quarterback more for sacks than offensive line usually.
Yeah, and I've got a little bit of concern. We talk about accuracy a lot, but I've got a little bit of concern of Joe Milton's pocket presence. I don't think he looks comfortable there, and it's a lack of experience playing time. He's had more than the average first-year starter, but there were times, I'm not talking about the Clemson game, I'm not talking about the Vanderbilt game, that I thought he looked uncomfortable in the pocket. So it's a question that's the back of my head, but certainly not a pressing question. And then what's the dealio with Jackson Mitchell, linebacker at UConn? You did some digging here.
Yeah, so UConn actually it's funny because Jim Mora Jr. is an offensive mind, and he always has been, but UConn is really loaded with defensive weapons this year. They got Eric Watts, their safeties, Durant Jones, and Malik Dixon-Williams are both very effective, but I think Jackson Mitchell is going to be the star. 140 tackles last year, 9.5 tackles for a loss, 4.5 sacks. Man, 140 tackles, that's like Andy Spiva in the 70s type of stats right there. So, I mean, watch out for him to be able to really potentially, give Tennessee problems in the run game.
May I throw out a random what the H?
Sure.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker.
I'm going.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
What the H happened to Jim Mora Jr.'s career?
I mean, he got fired by UCLA so they could go get Chip Kelly.
I know, but he was rocking it. He was like one of the best young coaches in the biz.
I mean, he tried to force Michael Vick into the West Coast offense.
Thank
Michael
you.
Vick can't run the West Coast offense.
Thank you. And then a defensive lineman, Aaron Fuamui, is no Fui out of Virginia. Your thoughts on what Virginia brings to the table with Aaron?
Yeah, so Tony Bennett, listen to me, rest in peace. Sorry. Tony Elliott is Tony Elliott is another offensive coach who has a defensive-oriented team this year. Chico Bennett and Antonio Clary. Virginia will go as far as their defense goes. Those are two weapons. But Aaron Falmui, I believe is how you pronounce his last name, is force in the middle, 8.5 tackles for a loss, 4 sacks. Pretty big threat, particularly how Tennessee relies on the run game. If Tennessee's offense is going to get going early in the year, they're going to have to establish that, and how they handle Virginia's front seven is going to really, really tell that story. But again, I want to say, I don't think any of these guys are really threats to Tennessee. I should be honest about that up front. These are just the best players who are going to face. Tennessee is blessed with a very, very weak non-conference schedule this year. I'm sorry if Tennessee's like 10-2 and at Ohio State or Penn State is 10-2. One of those Big Ten East teams probably had a tougher schedule than Tennessee this year, and you can't use the SEC thing because Tennessee's non-conference schedule is so bad.
Yep, and before I get to Frank Harris, let me take you crazy cats in my Tony Bennett voice. You need to check out Andy Mason of AndyMasonRealEstate.com. That's where all the wild kids go. Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com will save you money, give you the best service on your real estate needs there in East Tennessee. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. So the top cat out there is Frank Harris, quarterback, UTSA. And that's all the Tony Bennett I got for today. I did the best I could.
Frank Harris is a potential high first, maybe third, fourth round NFL draft pick if he has a good season this year. Frank Harris is the best group of 5 quarterback there is. I don't know why he didn't transfer to a Power 5 school because he was the CUSA most valuable player last year. They are now in the American. He is a baller. UTSA has a ton of preseason all AAC players since they're in the American now. Josh Cephas, DeCorian Clark, Kavoria Barnes, Oscar Cardenas. It all goes through Frank Harris. He is a superstar, dual threat. If Tennessee's not careful, this is the one player on this list they should actually be concerned about, because if they're not careful, UTSA could give them trouble.
I love our message board. Pentagon says aliens abducted Mora Jr., quite possibly. Rocky Top Tom says, isn't the name of UVA's basketball coach Tony Bennett? It is.
He's right.
Yes.
You're so right.
Those crazy Cavs.
Tony Bennett, the basketball coach, is one of those guys that totally proved me wrong, because I am a guy who says defense does not win championships in college basketball, and then he won a championship with defense. But that Virginia team was loaded offensively.
I tell you, that defense is the key. See, I'm worried. My Tony Bennett impression is getting better by the moment.
Again, Dave is somebody who thinks Hoosiers was a good movie that made sense.
I didn't like Hoosiers. Cry me to the moon. Gonna play some defense and win that ACC, kids.